Zero.
Threshold.
Wow, that was a pretty cool video, huh? Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm Chris West, the President and CEO of North Coast Community Homes. For those not familiar with us, North Coast Community Homes provides peace of mind and stability for families and their adult children with disabilities. We provide safe, affordable, and comfortable homes for nearly 700 people with developmental disabilities, severe mental illness, and other disabilities across Northeast Ohio. Tonight is a culmination of a design competition that challenged designers to think differently about accessibility. It's a journey we appreciate you joining us on, even if it's only for tonight. We've asked professionals and students from around the world to think beyond just the function of a ramp, a lip, or a curb cutout. We've asked them to push the envelope and consider beauty as an intrinsic part of accessibility. It's a fundamental desire to want something beautiful. So tonight, we're celebrating the best of the beautiful and innovative designs submitted from 6 different countries. But before that, we will hear from a panel that will challenge us to think differently. And then we will hear from Chris Downey. As we move into the program, let me finish with a few words of thanks. There are many people we should recognize, but they don't want me up here for an hour. So I've been asked to limit my thank yous just to our sponsors. Please know we're grateful to all of you, including the McGregor Foundation, ChuckMintz.com, Ancora, Todd Associates, NPI, Swagelock, Menorah Park, Bylowski Cleveland, Nottingham Spurk, Dorothy Holmes, Bocon, Michael Weingart, Case Western Reserve University. Our presenting sponsor, Mont Surfaces by Mont Granite, deserves additional recognition. Dinesh Bafna, their CEO, has been a longtime supporter of our organization. We are grateful for his leadership, your leadership, passion, and inspiration. Let's give a round of applause to all of our sponsors. Now I want to take a moment and recognize the Cleveland Foundation, without whom none of this would be possible. They dedicate so much to lifting up the potential of this city and the people who live here. Excuse the nervousness. The Cleveland Foundation has supported us and engaged with us on the belief that we can one day make Cleveland the world's best barrier-free city. Please help me welcome Lillian Kurri, Cleveland Foundation's Vice President for Strategic Initiatives, Arts, and Urban Design, who has walked hand in hand with us for the past year.
Good evening. On behalf of the Cleveland Foundation, thank you for joining us here tonight, and thank you for investing your energy and this incredible enthusiasm. I said to many people during the reception, this is an extraordinary group and an extraordinary turnout. Like you, I'm very excited to see who has won tonight. But I'm hopeful that we will not only see these incredible ideas and designs on these boards, but we hope to assist and collaborate to build some of these projects. The Cleveland Foundation is so honored to partner with North Coast Community Homes and the Kent State Urban Design Collaborative, who approached us with this idea and really came to us and said, how can we work together on this? And their vision got us excited from the very first day. I have a personal connection to this work, though, that I just want to talk about. Some of you know that I'm trained as an architect and an urban designer, but for me, I come with a very personal experience. About 10 years ago, when my father passed away, my mom, who lived alone in a house that was going to be too hard to manage, decided that she wanted to come live with me. So I decided to build a new kind of home in the city in which she could come live with me but have her own independence. Imagine a kind of structure with an accessory dwelling unit that was actually attached so that my mother could age in place with me and my kids, who were 3 and 6 at the time. She would often say that not only was it the accessible unit and the lively, walkable urban activity and university circle that allowed her to thrive in the last 10 years of her life, but it was the adjacency and the connectivity to her family and her grandchildren with this independence that allowed her to enjoy the end of her life with dignity, freedom, and joy. So for me, this is really personal, and I think that the opportunity here across the city is tremendous. So before we discover our winner and winners, we have a panel that I'm told will challenge all of us. And so I asked them to come up as I introduce each of them. Unsurprisingly, the topic is accessibility. They all have unique perspectives on this subject, each with a very different angle that will expand our thinking and understanding of the issue. The first is Jason Powers. He is the City of Cleveland's new Director of Middle Neighborhoods. I'll let him tell you what a middle neighborhood is, but it's very important. He's joining us with a perspective on urban design and neighborhood development from his background. The next is Sandra Madison. She is an architect and the CEO and chairperson of Robert P. Madison International. She is taking this groundbreaking and historic architectural firm started by her grandfather, Robert Madison, to new heights. We are so honored you could join this panel today. Trey Johnson, who joins us from the Federal Reserve Bank. He is involved with regional development and engagement and also has great interest and expertise in middle neighborhoods. He will also explain what that is. In addition to a successful businesswoman and interior designer, Sheena McGee has a special connection to disability through her daughter and through her advocacy work. She was also on the jury, so we should thank her for that. So she reviewed and judged all of these designs tonight. And last but not least is Jane Reed, who joins us on the stage, a longtime resident of Old Brooklyn, which is the neighborhood we hope to build these homes, who is passionate about the neighborhood and brings a personal perspective to the necessity of accessibility. She is also featured in an article about Zero Threshold. Jane, thank you so much for being here. So welcome all. We look forward to this energetic discussion. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie Van Doren. Jamie heads the marketing at North Coast Homes. He is the project director for Zero Threshold. He's been involved in it from its nascent starting point. And I can tell you, if anyone knows Jamie, it's extraordinary what he does as a one-man guy, and it's incredible what he has accomplished through this project. So thank you.
So I'm going to trust the audience to know that the names aren't perfectly in order, but that's okay. That's okay. Before we begin, if you guys would just indulge me, I know we've been through quite a few thank yous, and I have a few as well. So honestly, if I think about it, this competition wouldn't have happened. This event wouldn't have happened without the great community partners that we've had, many of whom are in this room. You know, without the people who saw a vision of what Zero Threshold could be, we just wouldn't have brought these designers together. we wouldn't be breaking barriers right now. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to name all the names, but I do want to call out a few people specifically. A special thank you to the Cleveland Urban Design Collaborative in Kent State, obviously, Maximum Accessible Housing of Ohio, Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, and the Old Brooklyn CDC, CC Hodgson Architectural Group, and especially CC herself. Where are you, CC? Oh, there she is, right in the front stage. She has been a huge help. One of our board members, Jan Gussick. Jan has been amazing. Jan, where are you? Oh, right there. Everybody say thank you to CC and Jan. They are amazing. Yes. There are many others, but you guys came to see awards, so we're going to move on to the panel. So a comment about that. The designs that we saw today are interpretations. They represent each designer's personal vision, what they see as most important or most innovative about accessibility. But it's important to remember that to any issue or situation, we bring biases. Biases are kind of our unconscious beliefs and thoughts about something. Our lens is shaped by our experience. It's shaped by our knowledge, what we learn, but also who we interact with and how we interact with the world. So as you see these designs, think about that. It is one perspective. Not everyone can have the whole story. Not everyone has the whole picture. So we'll use that actually as our kickoff point for this panel. And as we begin, I'm going to ask our panelists simply to share, what does accessibility mean to you, or what is most important for us to think about in terms of accessibility?
So I'll start by describing something that happened 5 years ago in the Old Brooklyn community. The Old Brooklyn Community Development Corporation brought together small business owners and residents to have a conversation around the brand of the neighborhood. A lot of sort of the luxury neighborhoods of a city tend to get new brandings and new sort of acronyms, but the CDC really wanted to make sure it was authentic by asking the people. And in that conversation, a word kept on coming up, which was affordable. And over the course of several hours and drinks and pizza, the group of neighbors got together and decided that instead of using the word affordable, they wanted to use the word accessible. Because affordable conjures up a lot of conversations, a lot of thoughts about things, whether it's federal subsidy or whether it's places that you don't want to be in if it's affordable. You want the next thing. You want to gravitate toward what's beyond that. So when I think of accessibility, when I'm talking about an accessible community, it's a place that you can get to as a family right now, but it's a place where you can truly invest in and get that place that you're living in to that next level. Accessible is about the middle class getting to a place that really they can turn into what they need it to be. And that's what the community that all of these projects were in really strives for.
Thank you, Jason. I'm going to ask that everybody really project, and I will draw the audience's attention to the fact that if you see the side screens, you'll note that what is up on stage is represented there. So if you don't have the best view, you have an alternate. Please, what does accessibility mean to you? Anybody, just jump in, please.
So for me, I'm Sheena. Thank you for having us tonight. Accessibility, when I think about it now, truly means that we can all come together and come and arrive together. So regardless of how we ambulate or move through space, we can all get somewhere together because we're all being included in that environment. And that's not just physically, it's also socially and emotionally, and I think that can be done very easily with the proper planning and design. And I think it also creates kind of a freedom and independence for each person to appreciate each other and start to move away from otherism and more into inclusivity as kind of a holistic concept.
Sandra Madison. I would say that accessibility to me means the freedom to be where you want to be at the time that you want to be there. And that's for everybody. As an architect, as an architect, that's what we want to do. We want to create space where people can feel good about where they are, can get where they want to go. And so for me, it means breaking down those barriers, all barriers for all people, not just people in wheelchairs or people that are blind, but people that have autism, people that just have other types of things that people don't really think about every day. But so that for me, it is about inclusivity. It is about breaking down barriers, and that's what I'm hoping that, and not think about when you're designing, not think about it as an afterthought, but something that's happens because it should be, because it's something that you do every day.
On that same note, I'm Jane Reed, and my view of accessibility is in the housing stock. It's in the shops and the stores that are in the neighborhood. Having had limited, very low-level disability that increased to a point where now it's important that the community has houses that, with this old housing stock that is old Brooklyn and the surrounding neighborhoods, there's narrow doorways, there's tight driveways, there's close proximity, with each other. So I think that it's important that you don't pass a house and you see a ramp system in the front and you get this stigma about, oh, somebody disabled lives there, that's too bad. Or you see one of those lift boxes that's occupying the entire front yard and you're going, oh, somebody in a wheelchair lives there. It just puts this image in your head that a disabled or maybe severely disabled individual lives there. And I can recall selling candy for fundraisers at school. There was a ramp system around the corner from my home, and I grew up in Brook Park. And I remember skipping that house to knock on doors to sell candy because as a child, I didn't even know what that was. All I know was that I wasn't gonna walk all the way up this ramp to this front door, and that to me, I thought about actually last night, because what if there was a campaign in old Brooklyn where they were giving away a car, or they were giving away a boat, or they were giving away a house, and the people were too lazy or felt apprehensive about approaching you to offer you to enter a contest about a car. They're gonna skip your house. So if you just bought that house and you're not even disabled, you got skipped. So if we remove and back off of some of that external appearance and try to make it more attractive or more integrative into the home, maybe recess the lift in the ground so it's just a driveway, it's just a front porch until the lift comes out of it. There's a lot of things that can be designed to take away the stigma of the wooden ramp and the gray box. So for me, it's kind of personal.
Yeah.
Because I went through a very rough last 3 years. I had 9-foot surgeries and 2 spine surgeries, and I'm walked up here today, didn't I? Because I'm that girl. So yes, I still have my power chair on my first floor, because at night I'm tired and I'm driving around my house. And I was fortunate enough to have a house where it fits through the doorways. It fits, okay? However, there's homes and people that probably are so tired from a manual wheelchair, maybe can't get the wheelchair in the bathroom. It's not gonna fit in a shower in a bungalow or a ranch. It's not gonna work. Yeah. So if we widen the doorways when we design homes, if we make sure that at least a manual wheelchair can fit into a bathroom, or maybe, right now in interior design, you're kind of getting into the walk-in shower. It's a 2-3 person shower if you watch HGTV. So that's good, because I can't take a bath in my house right now. I really can't. I have to take a shower. So there's obstacles for me that are personal. So I look at the designs and I say, wow, that never even crossed my mind. So,
I think a lot of us are feeling that way, that there's a lot of really great and very interesting things happening in the designs, and there's a lot of opportunities here that we need to think about.
Creativity, and that's where I'm at right now.
Trey, I'd love to hear from you. What does accessibility mean to you?
Good evening, everyone. So as one of the challenges of being the last panelist to speak on a question, you're always like, I agree with everything that's been said before me. But trying to come up with a little bit different spin. So a lot of the conversations I'm in, representing the Federal Reserve Bank, and then also before that when I was in 2 different philanthropic organizations, is around opportunity. And so when I think about accessibility, it's really about everyone being able to take advantage of every opportunity that is in front of them, and removing unnecessary barriers, or actually removing every barrier that is there, so people, regardless of who you are, or whether you're able-bodied, you have a disability, or any factor at all. So it just allows people to take advantage of every opportunity that is in front of you that you want to pursue. So I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, that makes sense. So it sounds like we need to think about accessibility well beyond just the structure of the home, and that's important, but also think about it in terms of inclusivity, in terms of affordability. So it sounds like there is some consensus among the panel about expanding the definition of accessibility. Is that correct? Or?
Yeah.
All right. So a lot of this we've talked about kind of from the social perspective. What's important to each individual? Why should we care about accessibility? Well, because somebody can't get into their bathroom. But if I'm a developer or an architect or a city planner, why should I care?
I think that's a good question. I think you're asking different groups of people when you're asking a city planner versus an architect. I do think there are going to be different perspectives on that.
So let's focus on, since we had designers designing for accessibility, let's focus on architects and developers and builders. Why should people who are building our neighborhoods, developing the next big high-rise, the next great, development adjacent to University Circle or wherever, why should they care about accessibility?
I think they should care because they need to integrate it so it doesn't stick out like, oh, this is a building for disabled people. Let's blend it in, blend it in, blend it in, mix it up.
I think
Design should be for everyone. We shouldn't have to think about it. It should be for everyone, all people. If it's not, then you're discriminating against somebody, and we don't need that. We've been through that before. we need to make it inclusive. So, we're having this discussion. It seems like we should. We are on our way to making our city one of the best, right? Barrier-free cities in the country and in the nation, in the world. And I think that's where we should keep going. We got a long way to go. We've got a lot of old buildings that need a lot of work. But I'm just saying that the fact that we have this discussion and we have everyone here today, we know that it's in our hearts, it's in our minds, and now it's at the forefront. And I think that we're on the right path. But
I think we have the tools. I think as architects and designers, we have the tools. We've been trained to build, and I think it was probably Winston Churchill who said, like, our buildings describe us and then we describe our buildings. And I think that's very true. If we can go forward and look at our environment and look at it through the lens of creating something that everybody can arrive to again. And I keep going back to that because with our daughter being able to go somewhere with her and making it easy for us to come together and get somewhere, I think that piece is important. I think we have the tools. We're trained to do that. We're trained to implement. Our builders are trained to then take the plans that we've worked through and analyzed and construct that for the community. So if we're going to be the creative points on that, we're being given a large responsibility, but also a gift to make it better. So.
It also brings independence to a group of people who may not have that independence.
You got to have to project a little bit, John. Sorry.
It brings independence to people who may not have it if we don't think about those things. And as we all know, when we all are so happy to be 18 and we have our independence. Some people, if we don't think about how we design and how we include people, may not get that opportunity, and we got to think about, what it really means to everyone.
Let me give Jane just one moment, because I know you're so very quickly, Jane, and then back over to Jason.
I think that affordability and the fact that people shouldn't have to leave Old Brooklyn or whatever neighborhood they're in, they should be able to stay there. So if there's things there that can keep the community together and you don't have to lose your house or stick out like a sore thumb, it's that. We don't want to leave.
Good point.
Yeah, so basically I'll second that. As Trey said, it's easier when you go later in the panel. Taking out the sociologist hat and putting on sort of the economist hat, in the Middle Neighborhoods Initiative, which is something that Cleveland's just begun this year, inclusivity is absolutely what's critical about this work, but where we're trying to look at it from a city perspective is how do we build neighborhoods where people can stay forever, because there's such a value that you don't necessarily see reflected in the home prices of having that social cohesion that you have when people can stay in their homes, when they grow their families, when they become seniors. The middle income bracket within the city of Cleveland can afford a fixed income. Seniors can stay in their homes if the homes are designed for them. And then when they move out, we need these homes to be beautiful so that people who are coming in, whatever their ability is, or if they're a part of just another general population, we want everyone to be able to find a place in these communities. But it's not just about the social inclusivity, which is principle. It is about the economics. It is about creating neighborhoods that can sustain the population of our city. And that's how we make Cleveland an inclusive and barrier-free place for everyone.
And I think to that end as well, you can get somebody looking in the housing market, and we don't have a saturated market of accessible homes. So there may not be a lot of choices out there, or if there are, there may be long wait lists. And then in addition to that, somebody who's graduating from college or high school who wants to go live on their own, who maybe is dependent on equipment to help them, then goes back and lives with their parents, even though they have the opportunity because they have the independence piece, but they can't because it's not available to them. So that I think develops your idea of the next person to buy it. It doesn't matter who it is. Anybody can go there.
Trey, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think along those lines of, I think about like just the functionality of homes, and I think about as we are building communities that, as we go over time, that are going to be able to work for anyone. I would hope that, if I decided that my wife and I wanted to move to, any neighborhood in the city of Cleveland, that we would be able to say, okay, we found a house, we love it, and not have to say, oh wow, I love this house, but I can't move there because it doesn't work for us. We can't exist in that space. And so I think about how do we as, decision makers think about how are we building for everyone? I think about the idea of I remember hearing a story about curb cuts and about how, curb cuts were originally brought in and people were like, oh, this is great for people if they're in wheelchairs, but then you think about everyone else who benefits from that. And so it's like, okay, that same line of thinking has to work for accessible homes, is that if you build a home that is accessible for everyone, then everyone is going to benefit from it. It's not just people who have a disability or who have a person in their family who have a disability. And so I think we need to really change the mindset of like, oh wow, this doesn't apply to me, or maybe it'll apply to me in 20 years if my parents get no, this is the right thing to do now, and I'm going to benefit from this even if I don't know how that happens. And so we need to really push hard for that.
I have one more question for the panel, and then we're going to take one, maybe two questions from the audience, just in the interest of time, because we want to get to the awards. So if you guys briefly can think about and then share with us in just a few short comments, what do you think the city can do to either promote or create opportunities for accessibility?
I think it starts with a conversation like this. I think this gives you a platform to create a dialogue where we start looking at things differently and we start having conversations and it starts to spread. And I actually had this conversation earlier where I was thinking about, okay, policy inform and ADA and accessibility and what do these codes actually mean, because in a private residence, where does that fit? Right, it doesn't. It's in commercial, and those who hold it close to their heart already design like this, and it's kind of ingrained. And those who don't, we kind of need to maybe understand that if you don't holistically understand design for everybody in inclusivity, we're marginalizing, one. And two, I think you can start to broaden it past needing a policy change, because you don't actually need a city policy change to design well, if there's already codes. So it's just, I think, more of a promotional issue, more of a conversation that needs to happen with it.
I don't want Trey to go last, so I'm gonna put it on Trey.
So I think building off of that, I think not from a city perspective, but I think that anyone who everyone has some level of influence or privilege that they can, we need to take our opportunity to advocate on behalf of others. We need to think beyond ourselves. At the Federal Reserve Bank, we think about one of the things that people don't realize is that I'm on a small team in community development, and one of the three things we focus on is affordable housing. And I need to be thinking about, how am I thinking about accessible housing? So I need to use my platform, all the privilege I have to say, this is an issue that we need to be talking about at a level where if I'm not hearing it, and if I am hearing it, I say we need to amplify it even further. So I think we all just need to use our platform to speak up, like I said, whether it affects you or not.
I think we would change the mind of some of our developers. And get them more in line with including all types of houses, not just one meeting the income of one threshold group of people. I mean, we have to think about inclusivity and think about affordability. And right now, it's a difficult balance. I'm finding.
I mean, I would, of course, second a lot of the things said here. I think one of the major challenges is that when we look at inclusivity, we think of it as all these add-ons, all these extra things that are extra costs to developing, whether it's a home or a multi-unit complex or an entire community. And we need to stop thinking of it that way, because accessibility is creating opportunity, and that is what leads to more businesses, more residents, more engagement. And so with every investment that we make from the city, from the region, we get a lot more out of it. We need to think positively about that.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody else said, and I think that there's entire pockets of the city that can stand to benefit from any type of housing improvement. So it's not just adding value to a specific unit or whatever. It actually adds value to the community. And when you add value to the community, then it's a level playing field. You don't have pockets where the housing values are real low, and then you got some that are real high. If you kind of blend everything in, then everybody benefits from it. The neighbors benefit from improvement, and when you improve something, everybody benefits. So I think that's how I think it needs to be viewed. It's not, oh, let's pick a spot and it's going to be an accessibility feature. Let's just spread it all out. Everything needs improvement because it's old housing stock. So.
Yeah. I'm going to take a question in a moment, but I want to share one thought, which is I think that, there's a timeliness to this conversation, because whether we realize it or not, we are probably on the cusp of a senior housing crisis. We have a lot of individuals who are getting older. All of us are getting older. And it's just a matter of time before any of us has to make that choice between, do I stay in my home where I am risking my independence because it's not safe for me? Or do I move to a different space that is not my home and is not the place where I've built memories, and risk a loss of independence and dignity there? So that's a hard question, and I don't think we want to put people in that situation, because not only is it hard personally, but I think there's a lot of economic imperatives around that as we start to push people into those situations where maybe they could afford to stay in their home, but they can't afford a senior living facility. So it's just another thing to think about. With that, if you have a question or anything of the panel, if you just want to raise your hand.
I have more of a comment on a question, but we're a small design firm in Hudson, Ohio, and we're doing a lot of first floor renovations for elderly homes. They want to stay there, right?
Yeah.
Part of our problem is that they don't want to have a first floor master suite because they think they're going to rent it out. So we're doing a lot of that. We're widening the doorways, all of that kind of no threshold to the shower so that they can stay there. Like they said, have their grandkids still come and be a part of their lives, but they can't. I mean, we're sort of limited too. So my question to you for the city is, are there incentives to be able to do that? Because it is a little bit more expensive to put in those kinds of things for housing units.
Yeah. Specific programs, I would be wrong to say I have 100% encyclopedic knowledge of all of them, but I'm not at this particular moment aware of specific programs geared toward that, which is why this conversation right now is so important. The city of Cleveland is actually looking at I think it's the 14th year now, the tax abatement process, and it was coupled, it's simply you get a tax abatement on the property taxes if you do improvements to your home, and the improvements were aligned specifically with environmental improvements. But other kinds of improvements for inclusivity and accessible design would absolutely be an important element into that. And that's what we're actually looking at right now at the city. I will be bringing this to that table.
Yeah, I would love, Hudson, I would love to say it's an education.
Thank you for
Let's
your
take
question.
one more. Does someone else have a question?
Going once? Going twice? All right.
Thank you, guys. I hope you guys found this informative. If you did, if you could give a hearty round of applause to our panelists. And it looks like we have some gifts for you guys, which is kind of par for the course, I think. You were kind enough to come up here. Thank you. Thank you, guys. On these awesome Zero Threshold bags. Aren't those great?
Thank you. Kind of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I know. It's like, God, these things are very high.
And this thing is scary, so I'm
Yeah,
gonna
it
go
is.
first.
I got you.
Thank you again to our panelists and moderator. It was a really wonderful conversation. I appreciate all of the insights and sharing. I think something Trey said resonated with me, which is that everybody in this room has some power and ability to affect change in this space. And I hope that from today, all of us, including me, will think about what else we can do to further this work. And so that was a bit of a call to action for me. So thank you, Trey. So I get the privilege to introduce our speaker tonight. And in many ways, each of us are in the midst of navigating a complex world. Many of us navigate with our sight, but we also find our way with our minds, our hearts, and through our connections with others and the world around us. Our keynote speaker this evening knows a bit about navigating in a complex world, as well as how we can connect to and experience the space around us. Chris Downey is a world-renowned architect, planner, and consultant. Working with design teams and clients, he draws on his unique perspective to help realize environments that offer not only greater physical accessibility, but also a dimension of delight in architecture experienced through our senses. He has worked on projects from Pittsburgh to San Francisco to Dubai. It is such an incredible honor to have Chris in Cleveland. I'm so excited to hear what he will share with us this evening. Please give a warm and hearty welcome to our keynote speaker, Mr. Chris Downey.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. So thank you for this opportunity, and I have a lot to share with you tonight. I want to jump right into it. Let's see if this is magically working. Hey. Okay, there we go. Got my sound. That's my friend. You'll get used to him tonight, speaking through the computer. Yes, I'm an architect and had 20 years of fairly typical practice in the field of architecture, and actually did an awful lot of work with disability, with accessibility and things, but it was always somewhat detached. It was always about complying with code. And then along the way, I ended up with a diagnosis of a brain tumor that needed to be removed, and it was located at my optic nerves. So, not having much choice in the matter, went in for surgery, and everything went according to plan, but 2 days after the surgery, my sight started to fail. The third day I woke up, my sight was gone. And in about a week and a half, the doctors came in to declare that there was nothing more they could try, nothing more they could do, that I was officially blind. That was my new normal. So then it started to sink in. Later that day, less than 6 hours later, I was visited by a social worker who was there to take care of all the stuff I had to do, all the logistics. Got to go to this place, that place, sign these forms, do this and that. And she goes, oh, and I see on your medical chart that you're an architect. So first, that's all I had to find on your medical chart. I'm an architect. Watch out. Anyway, notice I was an architect, and she said, so we can talk about career alternatives. It's like, wow. It hasn't been 6 hours. Hasn't been a full day since I'm officially, quote, blind, and all of a sudden, expectations are starting to change. Opportunities that I would take for granted were starting to slip away. Just like that, within 6 hours, walls were starting to come up around me. So that got my attention. And through that, all sorts of things. I don't have the time to go through all the personal stories behind that. But it was a rather intense night, and came out with quite a charge to get out and to prove the social worker wrong, but also to re-engage with life, with my family, to figure it out. I had no idea. I didn't know anybody that was blind. And I quickly realized that the only person that I knew that was blind was the guy in the ADA diagrams about protruding objects. There's this guy with a diagram. He's got his cane, he's walking, and he's talking about how objects come off a wall. And I used to stare into the eyes of that character in the drawing, thinking, what's that about? That's something I just couldn't imagine. It's something I couldn't wrap my mind around. And it's almost as like, that's where I ended up. I ended up living that experience. And so through that, there's all sorts of things that happen that's really could be taken as an adventure. And unfortunately, there's an awful lot of stuff that you have to do. Unfortunately, unlike a computer, you can't just download the new operating system. Like, give me that new non-visual operating system. You got a lot of training you have to go through. You have to learn new ways of doing things that you assumed required sight. And things related to just basic safety or mobility, how to move around town, how to move around through your house safely, effectively, economically, how to problem solve without one of your primary senses. But there's also learning Braille, working with technology, all sorts of things that go into living skills, just go into being a fully functional, engaged person. And so there's just an awful lot that has to get done. Within that, one of the key areas is orientation and mobility. That what I mentioned before, walking around with a cane. That's sort of the fundamental thing about independence if you're blind, of how to get around. And it was kind of interesting as an architect. I actually got to the point where I realized that if you know you're going to go blind, study architecture. It's the best training ever for going blind. A little counterintuitive. But the reason is you learn to obsess on the environment. We study it, we see through it, we analyze things. We don't take it for granted. We really focus in. And unfortunately for me, my focus had been incredibly visual. And I think that's the case for lots of us architects. But through this experience of going through orientation and mobility, I was learning to obsess on the environment through other senses, other experiences of architecture, things that I never stopped to appreciate or understand before. And in this environment, not only was I getting to experience it differently, I could then relate what I was experiencing through sound, through textures, through various things. I could relate those same spaces that I knew visually to that visual memory to realize the relationship and how they could work together. And how you could work more meaningfully instead of accidentally with some of these other things to be more effective with the space that you design. So all of a sudden, that orientation and mobility, or some of this training for sight loss, it started teaching me things about architecture, things that I never realized, and things about the city. So with that, I was, I was thinking about, I was actually back at work, always already working, doing things, and was getting pretty comfortable with things. And I was also getting pretty good at walking around, and I was getting pretty independent. Here I am walking through downtown San Francisco, and really getting used to hearing the traffic around me, people walking by, hearing architecture around me, and all sorts of stuff. And then it hit me one day how different things were. And I've talked about it before, about sort of the social change in the city, how all of a sudden people would be talking to me and stuff. But there were some other things I noticed, and one of them was that when I was sighted, maybe it's because I'm from the South. I was born in Nashville, Tennessee, grew up there in North Carolina. I can't help it. I want to talk to people. And also, I'm the guy that always gets out of the way. Walking down the sidewalk, I'm the one who's always moving out of the way. And I was like, Downey, you gotta hold your ground. Let the other people move every now and then. It'll be okay. What'll happen? It's like, you're really miserable at this game of pedestrian chicken. You need to get better. And then it's like, it dawned on me. It's like, it has been ages since I've had to get out of anybody's way. And then it dawned on me that, I had become the badass chicken out on the streets. And except for one time in New York where I was walking down the street and I approached one guy and he's like, yo, dude, come your way, go to your right. It's like, okay, I'll get out of your way. So anyway, it really sort of changed that. And with that, and also some of the things I was learning through architecture, was that I had it was odd. It was me. It was the same person, but my place in the city, my place in society had really changed a lot. But it's still me. It's like I haven't changed at all. It's like I'm still thinking the same stuff, doing the same stuff, and just going about it in different ways. And with it, I started to realize that I was really thinking about it. It's like in architecture, we're taught to walk in our client's shoes, not to solve your problems, but to really embrace their situation, what they're needing to do. And that's a big part of architecture and design, is the process of empathy. And with that, it's really sort of getting to the point where that's really what I realized what I was doing. I'm still thinking as a visual architect, trained in the traditional ways, but I'm living my life through this blind avatar, going about through the city, engaging all sorts of things, and then having this dialogue between my sighted, trained architectural mind and my new non-visual blind mind, and thinking through things and trying to work through those kind of situations, and really learning through that. So it's also something I realized that blindness is something that's really hard to understand from the outside. So it's a really unique opportunity to contribute to the profession and to our understandings of a different way of experiencing the world. There he goes. Okay, sorry. So, and through that, I was learning all sorts of interesting things that I started referring to. These were the things that I would learn through the benefit of having lost my sight. New realizations that just never would have come to me without that. And I started thinking of those insights as my new outsights, the insights I gained through the benefit, the process of having lost my sight. And those things take all sorts of forms, from sort of social, architectural, aesthetics, all sorts of different things. And in particular, tonight I want to talk about it in a slightly different way, and that's sort of architecture in the senses. I hope that's what. Oh, I got ahead of myself. Talking about, sorry, I got ahead. The creative process. One of those outsides is the idea that realizing that the design process, it's really an intellectual process. It's not something like doing a pretty drawing or something, a nice composition. It's about solving problems. It's about how you think through situations and how you design spaces. And so as an architect, that's my primary mission. That's still intact. My mind still works. All I needed was ways to access it. I needed new tools. It was really a tool problem. It's like, how could I access the drawings? How could I draw? How could I do the work? And A key thing with that was getting a new embossing printer, being able to print drawings in tactile form. So I could take architectural drawings, have them converted to PDFs, and then print them directly through the printer and read it through touch. So that should be so that's an example of an embossed drawing. And so it's a really different way of reading a drawing, but it's very effective. And I've actually found that some aspects of it are better. When I read a drawing through touch, especially when I'm working in a floor plan, it's like I'm at the tip of my finger where that finger is touching the page. So as I'm moving through the building, I'm actively thinking about what it's like to be in that space, imagining all the materials, all the sensory things that are happening around me, designing more actively through that experience instead of a visual experience, so looking at a composition and saying, hey, that's a nice composition. And this is a process I developed of how to draw on it. It's just a kid's craft toy, a little wax stick that doesn't take any tools to work with it. It's wax, so as you work with it, it gets sticky and it can stick right to the paper. You can curl it, fold it, snip it with your fingernails. You can work in 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, and I can use it to draw directly on top of the embossed drawings. So it's almost like just sketching ideas directly on top of a background drawing. Did I advance? What happened there? And what was interesting through that, something I didn't anticipate, is as I started doing projects that were for the blind and visually impaired or projects in the disability community, the very things that I did to access the work provided access into the process for others that were blind or clients that were blind. And in this case, it was a new headquarters for the Independent Living Resource Center in San Francisco, the executive director for which was blind since birth. So the very drawings that I used to be able to access the work were drawings that I could share with her. And she loved it when we'd be in meetings, and the two of us, we'd have our hands all over the drawings just like in this photograph. And everybody's like, we can't see what's going on, we can't follow. And she's like, yeah, life's tough, get used to it. She just loved it. So anyway, now I should be ready for it. So all of that was really taking architecture beyond sight. It's both the process, but also what the architecture it is, how that is. And so that's a big part of what I've been doing. And so the next is taking it into this really different area of architecture and the senses. So the first thing is, it's odd. If you lose your sight, the sense of hearing becomes incredibly important. It's one of the most easiest ways for you to access the world beyond you, sort of beyond your fingertips. And how do you access that? So the sense of sound in a space becomes really important. And it was actually on the very first project that I worked on after I lost my sight. It was a polytrauma and blind rehabilitation center for the Department of Veterans Affairs in Palo Alto, California. And this particular lobby, this rendering that's on the screen, I was reading the plans of this design, and I realized there were some significant challenges for the blind. And this is an early study, so there's some glaring code problems with it. But a big issue that nobody was aware of was how difficult that space was for the blind. It's like you had to walk right down the center of this space to get from one side to the other and to get to the foot of the stair. Easy to do if you're sighted. How do you do that if you're blind? People say, go straight all the time. Where is straight? Is it this straight? Or you're talking about the hallway that's going that way, that's straight. It's like, so it's a very relative thing, and it's hard to talk someone through that, and there was very little to work with. And they said, oh, we could put something in the ground, in the floor so people could follow it. But the VA didn't want to do that because they aren't going to have that at home. They need to figure out, they need an environment where it's going to be realistic to learn from. So it made me realize, there's a bridge overhead. It's like, I wonder if you could hear if you're under the bridge. It's like if I'm walking with your cane, tapping along, could you hear if you're under the bridge or not under the bridge? If you could hear that you're under, you know you're going straight down that space. And learning to work with sound is an important part of that training for sight loss. So how can we design that in? And so I worked with the acoustic engineers. It's like, yeah, we think we can do that, but just in case, we'll put in some conduits for speakers in the future. We just pipe in some sound. It's like, that's not very good. I kind of like to test it, work with it. We do all sorts of drawings, all sorts of modeling. Can't we do that with acoustics? Well, not so easily. But then I eventually got introduced to another group of acoustic designers that actually model sound. So you can go into their sound lab, and they take digital models, BIM models of architectural work, things that haven't been designed yet. They do it for music halls and things, and you can go into their sound lab and hear what the space sounds like. So you could put an orchestra up on stage, an oboist, whatever, pick a seat, hear what it sounds like out in the audience, change the materials, the shape, all sorts of things, and see how it changes that sound. And so I started a collaboration with them of trying to explore how I could hear my cane and how it would interact with the environment around me. And the thing is, when you tap your cane, you're not listening to the sound from there. You're listening to how it goes off from the cane tip out to the space, hits walls, hits the ceiling, and comes back to your ears. And then you can start to hear the proportions of the space, where openings might be, doorways, all sorts of things. So you start to hear the environment. And in the sound lab, we developed ways where I could start to explore that, develop it, and affect it in positive ways. So the first place we had a chance to work with that is for the Lighthouse for the Blind and Visually Impaired in San Francisco. And this is the lobby on the 10th floor. And they had floors 9 and 11, so the floor below and the floor above. And with that, it was a community center. It was a place that not just to get training, but to meet other people that are blind, to have mentors, to have conversations, to build community. And we want to have a sense of that community through that space. So if you're sighted, you could come out of the elevators, look out, you could see stairs going up and down. These were new stairs we wanted to put in to connect those 3 floors. So if you're sighted, you could see it. But then we wanted to hear those stairs if you're blind. We wanted to be able to hear people, foot traffic, canes, dog paws going up and down the stairs, so that you could get a sense of the space beyond and the greater sense of all the excitement and sort of designing for multiple senses simultaneously in that space. So let's see. So with that, we did some modeling. We wanted it to be a dynamic, exciting place, but at the same time, we needed to have effective communication. A receptionist could be on the phone in conversation with others or whatever else and have all sorts of conversations. So it's like, how do you design it to be lively but effective and comfortable and maintain speech intelligibility? And how can the architecture support that? So in this modeling, we did this first one is, I'll play it here. It won't be quite as good in this sound system, but you'll get some idea of how that works. And remember, this is a digital modeling of me walking through the space, tapping my cane. All right, here we go. So in the interest of time, I want to keep moving. So that was pretty raw. There's not a lot of absorptive materials. In this next one, did it go? In this next one, did it go the right? Sorry. Is it back to the slide? Okay. Same slide. Okay, you're back in, guys. Okay. So this is the preferred acoustic condition. Here we've added sound attenuating insulation, micro-perf poles in the walls to absorb sound, carpet in some places. But we kept, if you heard, I was tapping primarily on concrete, the cane tips that were hitting on concrete. And that's a really intentional decision so that the walkways would be hard so we could hear each other's cane taps. So we could know who someone that's around us, But also, it's a way you can hear the space. If you put in carpet, you wouldn't be able to hear the space. But also, we start to recognize each other's cane taps and footfalls. So just as you recognize somebody with a quick little glimpse down the hallway, we can hear them and say, oh, that's Joe down the hall. So things we wanted to work with. But anyway, here's this more preferred sound, and you can really hear the difference in the speech from the receptionist when he welcomes you to the lighthouse.
Good morning. Welcome to the lighthouse.
So hopefully you can hear is a little bit more clear, a little bit better speech intelligibility, but also is helping us to work with a different sound from one space to another, so you could hear when you're moving from one space to another. So there's plenty about that. Then such a touch. And with that, I want to change the way we're thinking about touch. It might be things you feel underfoot. You think about walking on a beach or putting your hands down on the beach, on the sand of the beach or wherever, having these different senses through other parts of your body, or possibly even through the touch of a cane. It's not, the cane isn't used just to find the edge of the platform. It's good to know, especially when it's right over here. But it's also, you can hear things in the environment around you, but at the same time, you're getting little cues about the materials on the ground, which can help you understand where you are. Just as you visually recognize where you are, you can, if you're on a regular path, you can confirm your location based on this series of patterns, textures you feel underfoot through the touch of your cane. So this is the Salesforce Transit Center. It's a major new transit facility in San Francisco. And it's a 4-block long building. This is the tallest, tight as the tallest building in the West Coast. But that tower, the Salesforce Tower, if you lay it down on its side, it's not as long. It's not as long as the building, the transit center is long. So it's an amazing thing. It's 4 blocks long, 4 long blocks. And on the 3rd floor, there's a bus platform. A lot of buses. Go find your bus. And inside it is a centrally located bus platform. And this is just a small, enlarged section of a small part of the plan. You had to walk up and down this entire length, 4 blocks, looking for your bus. And it was really hard to even know how to walk up and down the length. So we ended up putting in textured lines, grooves in the ground where you could follow a line straight up and down either side of this bus platform to go up and down the length. And then, hopefully I'm on the right, and then textured paths of textured concrete so you could know where to find stairs, escalators, and elevators to leave the bus platform. So there's all this sort of a tactile system that was integrated. We did a lot of testing with different groups of different disability groups, different mobility devices, all sorts of things to make sure that what we did to solve the problems for the blind weren't creating problems for others. And it's all about getting, being able to get to your bus pylon where you would find your bus. So. And also this idea of touch, and I wanted to touch on this, because this could be also really important in the homes. And this is a training kitchen for the lighthouse for the blind. And one of the big challenges now, today, and for the blind in domestic settings are appliances, finding accessible appliances, especially as we go to more and more touch screens and more tact-free or non-button things, control devices that you can't feel. And that's what operates everything, or everything is visual. So having to deal with different types of appliances and dealing with what you have as opposed to what you really need. I need to turn my friend down. Sorry about that. Yeah, the handrail design process. That's where I was. And it's not just sort of the sort of usability functions. We were doing it for this new stairs at the lighthouse for the blind and visually impaired. We were really sort of curious about touch and how you could convey the quality of space and the quality of the design to someone who's not going to see it. And so in this case, it's like we don't go around feeling the walls everywhere we go. But there are places in the building where we know that people will touch aspects of the building, and in particular, the handrail at a stair. And in this case, it wasn't necessarily about what it looked like, but how it fit the hand, how it gripped you, or how you gripped it. And we wanted it to be something that was really surprising. And so we did a lot of work. I did some sketches with my wax sticks. We did actually 3D prints where we took those little wax sketches and then did extruded 3D prints of those sketches to test it and how it actually fit the hand, and eventually ended up with a wood handrail that it stops people. And I really think of that as sort of like the handshake of a building. Is really how it really conveys that sort of really intimate greeting and sort of says something about the design, about the space that you're in. And then the sense of smell. Well, it's really important for knowing where you are. You can recognize places, but I also lost all sense of smell. And so it's not something I get to work with very much, and I don't want to take too much time with it. And there's the sense of taste, and unless anybody goes around tasting architecture, we're going to pass on that one. And on top of things, since I have lost all sense of smell, that affects your sense of taste, and that puts me at the really dubious place of being the blind architect with a questionable sense of taste. So I'll pass. But another thing is sense of proprioception. And this your awareness of your body in space and your muscle movements, your positioning, that you get all sorts of information about the world around you. And through this, it's something I've become keenly aware of. Also as an athlete, I'm on a competitive crew team, and in there it's all about proprioception. It's about sound too. You hear when the blades catch the water. You hear slides going up and down the seat, but it's all about muscle memory. It's about being fully aware and control of where your body is at any point in time, trying to sync up with everybody else. And it's a great sport if you're blind. It's actually one of the most amazing, accessible, competitive sports if you're blind. But that idea of proprioception, of knowing through that idea of understanding your muscle movements and things, you really get to understand inclines underfoot. You can really recognize all sorts of inclines and know exactly where you are based on what you're feeling. So it really plays a big role in the blind experience. And even things as simple as finding room signage. Thanks to codes, they're in very predictable places. You don't have to go exploring all over the walls. Where is it today? It's like you just, boom, it's right there. It's a piece of cake. And so that's another big part of proprioception, and it's sort of building in those patterns within buildings. Finally, sense of sight, which is an interesting thing. Why would I be up here talking about the sense of sight? And that's the idea, something that was news to me after I lost my sight. I thought blindness was about no sight at all. That's what I have no light perception, nothing at all. That turns out that's a very small portion of the blind experience. In fact, it's only 6 to 8% of the legally blind experience. That was revolutionary to me. Well, what I've also realized is it's actually more challenging than having no sight at all. Because your sight can be very, very dependent on the visual environment around you, which heads up to architects and designers in the space. That puts a lot of pressure on us as designers to be aware of it and design for those experiences. So this is a simulation tool showing the same concrete plaza with a concrete bench, and depending on the sun, the type of light coming into the space, you may or may not see that concrete bench in the middle of the space. And people fall over this. And you don't have to be fully blind, but there are lots of people with low vision conditions that don't use canes that have fallen over this concrete bench. And hopefully this is an interior photograph, time-lapse photography. And I'm going to look at the same space, different times of the year, with a visual impairment. And how the visual accessibility changed so much just because of, through the different times of the day, different types of light, and how that visual impairment affected that experience. So that's all a function of lighting. It's about high contrast, high visual contrast, patterns, shadows, all sorts of different things that go into affecting that. And in this case, these are the stairs at the Lighthouse for the Blind and Visually Impaired. So we put in high visual contrast nosing strips at each stair, each tread. By code in California, we're required to do that at the first and last tread of each run of stairs. We chose to do it at every one, and that's not a requirement in all codes. It's a state code. But anyway, it's without those, this would just be seen as a big lump of brown wood for those with low vision conditions. You wouldn't be able to see the stair treads at all.
Slide 48. Contrast and light outside.
And then also with contrast at the signage there at the lighthouse. So
Slide 50. Slide 50. Lighthouse lighting manifold user provided.
Actually, I hit 2 by mistake there.
Slide 49. Slide 49. Lighthouse lighting manifold code provided.
Another situation that came up for that lighthouse project is lighting, getting enough light. We did, with the California energy regulations, if we did the most got all the light we could under the current energy regulations using the most advanced lighting, bulbs, fixtures, and control systems, it turned out, although we complied with code, we were only providing a quarter to half of the recommended light levels for people with low vision conditions. In the lighthouse, 40% of their staff are blind, and all their clients they serve are blind and visually impaired. So we were actually able to work with Americans with, as an ADA workplace accommodation to make an argument, providing the data. This is the kind of lighting we needed, and all sorts of research data. And we got an exception to be able to get the lighting we needed. But more importantly, that was a code thing. But there's also things we could do in lighting. One thing in the circulation areas, all the lighting is linear, and it runs in the north-south direction, even when the hallway goes east-west. So for those with low vision conditions, they could tell by the lighting overhead if they were going east-west or north-south, walking with the lighting or walking against the linear lighting. Other things to accentuate space, using the lighting to really create places that would be visible for those with low vision conditions.
Slide 51. Slide 51. Slide 51. Inclusion.
So, in wrapping up, so there's a big focus is on accessibility, on barrier removal. And at the risk of, I want to sort of expand, we've been trying to expand that notion of accessibility, of inclusivity, and what that means. And it's really interesting, as an architect, when I lost my sight, I thought about wheelchairs. I thought about mobility impairments. As I explained, I really didn't have any understanding of the blind experience in space. But it's really, and it's sort of the challenge when the symbol is a specific thing, but it's also the challenge that it starts to create that othering thing. We need this signage to call out the accessible route and accessible rooms and things because the other things aren't accessible. That's the problem. It's almost like if everything was accessible, we wouldn't need that sign. And it's sort of also thinking about the idea of accessibility. And there's people with disabilities, people without, or as I've said it before, people that have disabilities and those that haven't found theirs yet. Right? It's something that changes over time. It's like I had no disability. Actually, 2 days before my surgery, I was up riding my bike in the Oakland Hills. 2 days later, I had surgery. That week, I was blind. That could happen in an automobile accident. That can happen anywhere. That can happen as a temporary thing, as a permanent new condition. And what I've learned through that experience is that's the normal part of life. What about that is different? What about having a disability, an impairment, or whatever is othering, is about something else? How is that not me? How is that not human? So I'd like to sort of change that diagram, that way of thinking, that paradigm of it's not about us and them or those with disabilities and those without. It's just the human condition. That's just the natural life-confirming part of life. And I also would like to share this little quote that I found while teaching a disability awareness merit badge for my son's scout troop when he was much younger. And just take a moment to read that quote there and think about it. So with that, you can change the language. You can argue today if different words should be inserted there, but there's a really important concept, especially for architects, designers, planners, anybody involved, builders, anybody involved with building the environment around us. And it's the idea that people with disabilities aren't handicapped until a barrier is put in their way. That's a profound thing that changes the relationship between those that create, those that build, and people that use. It makes you realize that it's not about complying with code. It's about your direct relationship with people that use that space and the realization that the choices we make, the investments we make, and the strategies we use to build things, that has a profound direct effect on the human experience and transforms a disability into a handicap. And I don't think too many architects, too many designers, planners would actually say, yeah, I want to do that. No, I don't think, I've never met anybody that would choose to do that. So, and finally, this should be the definition of universal design. Hopefully that's one up. Well, I'm not getting anything there. Oh, invisible barriers. Yeah, invisible slide for me. And some of those barriers are not even barriers that we're aware of. Things that never crossed our minds, that we have the responsibility to learn more about and to act upon. So now we should be at the universal design definition by Ron Mays. And for those that don't know it, it's a really powerful approach to things. It's contrary to sort of the codified approach to accessibility. It's really thinking through things. It's a really challenging design philosophy to follow. And with this definition, the actual practice of it doesn't do it. But this definition is a little troubling to me because it only focuses on this idea of being usable. And so I'd like to propose that we substitute that or insert along with it the idea of it being delightful for everyone. So anyway, with that, it's not enough. No architect aspires to create usable spaces alone. We want it to inspire, to animate life, to celebrate life, to bring delight to everybody's daily or special ceremonial events. So anyway, with that, thank you very much.
Zero.
So we're here for an awards event, right? Yeah. Thank you. So I know I didn't introduce myself before, but Lillian did. I'm just going to remind you, I'm Jamie Van Doren. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for North Coast Community Homes. It's an organization that is very dear to my heart. I have a passion for what this organization does because my mom is intellectually disabled. Very unique situation growing up, but one of the things that she always offered me was love and belief that, oh goodness, belief that I could be anything and do anything and live however my best life would allow me to live. So this design competition also means a lot to me because if your home is designed in a way to support you, it also gives you the opportunity to live the best way that you can live. So let's keep that in mind as we go through these. All right, so the first up, we had a lot of designs. Let me just share with you. So initially we had about 130 competitors plus raise their hands from 20 different countries. A design competition is a lot of work. You guys saw those designs. Those took hours and hours and hours of work. Probably not 5, like hundreds of hours. So by the time we got into a deeper submission phase, that 130 had winnowed down to about 45. That finally winnowed down to about 34 people who were able to make the deadline and get their designs in, fully developed in a way that they felt were representative of how important the competition is. And so we had 34 designs that the jury came to and looked at, and we had great jurors. So Sheena McGee is a wonderful juror. She is a very accomplished interior designer. She is trained. She does wonderful high-end design. She's also on the board of Maximum Accessible Housing, and she has a personal connection. We had Andrew Friantini, who is a principal at Perkins & Wills, one of the premier design firms in the world. We had Justin Garrett Moore, who is the executive director of the New York Public Planning Commission. So he approves all the public plans for New York City. He came into Cleveland just for this design competition. We had Liz Ugbu, who is an urbanist and a designer who is literally flying around the world all the time. When she came into Cleveland, she was like, wait, where did I just come from and where am I at? But she does amazing, important projects all around the world. We had Youngju Chan, who is a professor at Parsons School of Design in New York, one of the best design schools around. She has a background in architecture, but she is really focused on industrial design and has really blended kind of art and function, which is what we thought was critical for this competition. I mean, you see it in the leg that's on the program guide, you see it in the video. If we want to really elevate accessibility, then we have to make it beautiful. So Youngju brought this kind of strong sense of aesthetic to it. And they laid out all of these boards. Now, originally we said, here are the categories that we have. And, we kind of noted on the back what category each one is in. And they said, well, thank you. We're going to look at all these designs now separate from categories, which is great. I mean, these are brilliant people. We're not going to put fetters on them. So they just looked at all the designs and said, what is this design doing? What's it accomplishing? What's it resolving? And they came to their own conclusions about what was best and what we should be focusing on, and not necessarily just on new construction, not necessarily just on accessory dwelling, not necessarily just on renovation or whatnot. And they were very demanding about what was going to meet the standards of what this competition promised. And so the individuals that we are recognizing tonight have done some really incredible work. And we're going to move into it right now. So the designs that could have been considered for honorable mention bring a lot of different things to the table. There's a high aesthetic for many of them. Many of them looked at neighborhood opportunities. Many of them looked at an individual home and had a really powerful design quality. But there's one that stood out. Let's see who it is. This is my mom, everybody. So our honorable mention for this evening also won the McGregor Homes People's Choice Award. So similar to this evening, we had a preview exhibit at McGregor, and we had nearly 70 people come through that exhibit, and they voted on their favorite, and this just happened to be it. So who was it that won? I am pleased to announce that it is Dahlin Group Architectural and Planning, which is John Thatch, Glenn Simmons, Kurt Donnelly. I'm going to mess up these names, I apologize. Pantia Koshevnevs, Jamie Almeida, Chriselle Rodriguez, Marcel Snodgrass, Dee Hun, and Elaine Tong. Can we just give them a round of applause? They're out of California, so obviously not able to be here, but their project was The Link, which you guys probably saw. The jury felt that it really brought a buildability to it. That one of the things that stood out was that it was just a phenomenal planning project. This was something that could be built now. And they loved the fact that it studied different generations and looked at how do you build that kind of intergenerational community. The student designs came from a wide array of areas, and I wish I could show you what some of those were. But we did have a winner of that, but I'm going to hold the reveal on that for a moment so that we can go to the best accessory dwelling. So if we can see that. All right, let's see who we have. So I actually already do know these, but this is kind of more interesting. So we had a unique situation here. I do want to highlight the fact that we had a lot of student competitors, and they really did some amazing designs. A lot of the designs that you guys liked were really were done by students. They brought in a lot of innovation. And the jury did something unique here. And I'm going to tell you who won first, and then I'll tell you what they did. So, University of Trento, Italy, Kyra Pinton, Erica Poli, Silvia Zomelli. That is a student team that won the best accessory dwelling concept, which was In Between. Let's give a round of applause for them. So it was a hard decision, but I think what drew the jury was that they came with a very unique concept, which was utilizing the space in between homes. And they felt that there was a promise there that maybe wasn't fully developed because they were students, but that there was a lot of potential there to look at how could you use that space in between homes and create that connection, whether you do a little bit more and maybe turn that fully into a greenhouse, open up the back and turn it into some dining area, but it's just a really interesting design. So they won both the best student design as well as the best accessory dwelling. Yeah, congratulations to them. And although they're not here, they do have a little thank you video that they wanted to share.
Hey there, it's Sylvia here.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Hello everybody, I'm Chiara. I'm so excited, my team and I won.
I'm so proud of us because we worked together until the 2016, so it's really a good thing for us to won this competition.
Sorry, I can't be there tonight. When we started this project, it was really important for us to make a big change in the neighborhood with little intervention. So it was essential being able to create an element that would allow anyone to live a normal life.
I think that the space that we project isn't only for disabled people. I think that is a space for everyone. And this is the force because we create a new semi-public space for a new accessible community.
I want to thank my teacher for helping us from the very beginning of our project 6 months ago, and then I want to thank ZeroThreshold for this opportunity and for let also students be part of this international competition.
We are so happy the jury liked our project. I would like to thank our professors for the support, my family to believe in me, my team who joined and shared this experience with me, and all of you. It's like a dream and I'm honored for this award. Thank you so much. Lot of love from Italy. Ciao!
Did you guys catch that they worked on that for 6 months? Whew. All right, the next award is for the best hybrid design. So the best hybrid design is a design that is not necessarily focused on just a home or a community space. It's something that might encompass a larger neighborhood, encompass retail. It might certainly encompass residences as well. So let's see who won. So our best hybrid design, we're going to jump right to it. Congratulations to Brandt and Hafford from New York. Kay Brandt, Knapp, and Jerome Hafford. Thank you. Brandt was not able to be here today, but Jerome has family in Ohio, and he came in. Jerome, do you want to say just a couple of words? Come on. Come on. Come up here. Come up here. I don't have a red light to flash at you, so if you just keep it relatively brief, but please.
Thank you, everybody. This is a huge honor.
I should have told you guys the design was side by side. So if you saw the table with the model, number 6. Go ahead, sorry.
Thank you. It's hard to see everybody. It's like the Oscars. Thank you, everybody. We poured our heart and soul into this project. It was a lot of fun to do, and I'm just glad to see that the jury felt the same way. We're a small practice, and we sort of only have so many resources to put into experimental kind of competitions like this, but we saw this project, and I have the personal connection having grown up in Akron, not too far away from here. And we were really excited to put our design effort towards a project that is not a sort of, expensive trophy for the rich, but actually a community project that our practice could continue our interest in public space. So we really had a great time doing this work, and it paid off. So thank you.
So what was really interesting to the jury about the design was how it created this interesting intersection between public and private spaces. And really also looking at, even within the home, how it created opportunities between public and private spaces. That was a theme both for The Link, which was our honorable mention, as well as for Side by Side that won the Best Hybrid. This idea of different ways of living and different ways of creating community. What's our, I think best interior, our best innovative design is our, So in terms of innovation, there was a lot of it in this competition. But the different designs that kind of rose to the top in that area really explored issues differently, whether it was looking at creating an accessible footprint for a home that could be done singularly or merged with another one to create two side-by-side homes or a duplex, or whether it was something that looked at a new type of interior or a new way to repurpose the backyard to create community spaces. But let's see who won. So the most innovative interior architecture design, a little bit of a reveal, was for All Access Home, which is by Studio APT in Michigan and Julia McMurrow. Let's give her a warm round of applause. Julia, are you, I believe Julia was coming in. Yes, Julia, come, say a couple of words. Thank you so much. Congratulations. And you can adjust those.
Hi, thank you. I'm very nervous speaking. I didn't expect to have to say anything, but I do want to thank everybody involved, Jamie especially. This is an amazing competition. My own history, I also have a personal connection to accessibility. I grew up with a sister with cerebral palsy and mental deficiencies, and it was only after working a long time in the profession that I started to make the connection between what I sort of knew from my personal experience and how we as architects can make a difference. I'm fortunate to be able to be teaching now at the University of Michigan and also realized, oh, I actually have this amazing platform to reach students in their development about accessibility. It's become a very important issue to me, and I'm very thankful for this competition and this community, and it was a great pleasure to work on this competition, and I hope everything in this room goes further places, so thank you. Thank you so much.
So interestingly enough, Julia mentioned that she worked as a professor. At one of the student designs that was considered was from one of her students. So that was in the mix, and that's really great. That was the mobile access, and then again, Julia's is the all access home. Yes. We're going to take one step back before we talk about the grand prize. Tonight, you guys looked at the designs and you made your own vote as far as what you thought was best, what touched your heart, what moved you. One of those designs was actually in the running for Best Student Design. So it's great that we're able to honor this evening's People's Choice, which was Carson's Home, which is designed by Trevor Kennard out of Wisconsin. Let's give him a round of applause. So congratulations, Trevor, on everybody liking your design.
I just want to thank everyone. This is a great competition. I was actually a few months into my design in my master's final project before I heard about the competition. So actually this is kind of what I want to do with the rest of my life. The competition kind of perfectly fit into the way my design was working with a few tweaks, and I, as we mentioned, have a very personal connection with my brother. I've always known I wanted to go into architecture, and I kind of never really had a passion for where that was going until growing up and spending time with him, and that's kind of, he shaped my entire world, and I'll continue to fight for accessibility and people with disabilities for the rest of my career. So, thank you.
All right, it's fine. It's time for the big grand prize. Let's see who won. No video for this. We're just going to get right into it. Of course I do. She was concerned that I might be having another technical difficulty, but I'm not. So I want to congratulate Side by Side.
What do we have here?
Jerome, if you could come up, come up.
Say a few words.
Wow, thank you so much. Wow, I get to be nervous twice. Thank you, to the organizers of this competition, Jamie, all of the people at North Coast Homes, and the Cleveland Foundation and the other organizations. Yeah, like I said, there's only so many times in your career that you can kind of scrape together the energy to really put yourself out there. You put yourself out there, you have no idea if someone's gonna like it, and I guess you guys did. So, about the design, I think part of what really stuck out maybe about our design was the energy we put into building this model, which I think, after listening to Chris's talk, which was beautiful and inspiring, when putting that much energy into something that's physical, it really allowed us to get inside of the spaces of this project, and it becomes such an experience of actually putting yourself into the design and actually inhabiting the mind or the body of somebody who might be in the project. So that was really a different experience for us and a different way to think about accessibility and making architecture accessibility in the design process, and actually looking at the neighborhood of Old Brooklyn and thinking about what's already there and producing a design that would complement that neighborhood and actually also connect to public space was really our impetus for the project. So thank you so much. This is really exciting. And I want to also just thank my design partner, Brant Knapp, who could not be here for very important reasons, and all of our team who worked on this project. So thank you so much.
So this is Sheena, one of the jurors. You like it?
So I'm putting Sheena McGee a little bit on the spot. She is one of the jurors who was reviewing the designs, and I just thought, Sheena could share some thoughts about either the side-by-side design or some words of wisdom with Jerome, or even just about how challenging it was or how moving it was to choose the grand prize winner.
It was intense. I'll keep it brief, but it was intense. We had a really, really fun, I think minimum 8 hours in a room. Not nearly enough coffee, but I'm just kidding. We had a great time doing it. We saw unique things within everybody's design that were innovative. We saw a lot of areas of growth, but we found a lot of promise in yours. And we also found that it was unlike a lot of the constraints that a designer or an architect or a planner may put upon themselves. We found there was a very gentle and intuitive approach with how you did it, and I think by doing a model, and I don't know who else might have done a model as an exercise, but using that as your presentation, we felt that you might have been able to put yourself into the space more through that experience. And I think for all of us collectively, we looked at it and we thought it was a really unique perspective. So it had many different elements in it that we really, really liked. So congratulations.
All right, and with that, I'd like to welcome Mary Edquist to the dais. Thank you, everybody.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mary Edquist, and I am the board chair for North Coast Community Homes. This event has been a long time in planning and executing, and I'm just so proud of everybody that's been involved and so thankful for everyone's support. There's just so many wonderful things to take in and think about tonight, from all the designs that we've seen around us to the speakers, the panelists, just a lot to take in. Just so much amazing, inspiring, creative energy, and so many people coming together with a vision of making a better, more beautiful, accessible world for all people. Thanks to all of you for taking the time to come out tonight and to join us. This event, the competition, the connections that we're making here, and certainly all of you are immensely important and meaningful. I have to thank the contestants, the judges, our speakers and sponsors, the amazing staff and supporters that help make this event a reality. Our hope, well, yeah, go ahead, applause, please, more of that. Our hope tonight is that the passion and hard work that has culminated in this event doesn't end here. We at North Coast, we provide homes to people with mental and physical disabilities. But the mission that we serve in terms of trying to provide independent homes and housing for people is a universal mission. Everyone needs a home. Everyone needs a place to stay. And as we age and we grow and we change throughout life, everyone here needs a home. So I think all of us here can understand that mission intuitively. And what we're trying to do is make that universal need translate into something that actually serves all people. And we would love to see one of these amazing designs developed and actually brought to life right here in Cleveland. So that is our hope and that is our goal. But more than just building a single home or a community building, we want to build partnerships so that Zero Threshold becomes more than just one tool for us to build a barrier-free world. And I hope that I'm not the only one with that vision. So Lillian, I know you've been up and down a lot, but I'd love to have you come talk again.
So the last thing to say is that this is not the end, this is just the beginning. And so on behalf of the Cleveland Foundation, I want to thank North Coast Homes. This has been an extraordinary evening and really moving. And so for us and for this collaborative, the next steps are to really take this opportunity and showcase not just Cleveland, but what we might do together to create the world's best barrier-free city. And I stand here today to say that I look forward to working with everyone to realize a few of these designs, and our goal is to work together to build a few of the homes and to test these ideas. And so those will be our next steps, and then to work together to do some planning across the city. And so I'm very excited for the next steps, and I thank you all for coming. It's been an extraordinary evening. Good night.
And before I just let you all go, I just want to thank Lillian and the Cleveland Foundation for sharing our vision and helping make this event possible, along with all of our other wonderful sponsors. Please take this opportunity to take a look at the artwork one more time if you haven't had a chance, or some of our award winners in particular. And don't forget to enjoy a few beverages. The bar closes at 9. And thank you again. Good night.